All right. Welcome to another episode of Owning the Goal. I am your host, Brian McFarland, and I'm a fellow salesperson. But whether you're a seller or not in your professional career, we are all salespeople because we're always defining success as getting to our goals. And today, I am so excited to bring on today's guest, Andrew Barbuto. And Andrew is a senior agency lead in digital media, as he's been for almost the last decade, and the author of an amazing book, Top Sales Producer. And he had me at hello because I'll just tell you quickly how Andrew got in touch with me is he sent me a totally cold message through LinkedIn, which is usually an incredibly low response rate. And he noticed me as a salesperson, and it actually came unbeknownst to him at the perfect time. You knew that because I just switched jobs. And I was like, I don't know, something about him just said openness. And I bought his book even before I met him. So I met him a couple weeks ago, and he's here today. So without further ado, I tell you as a listener, grab your beverage, whatever you're doing, take some notes, and you are going to learn so much from this man who is so wise beyond your years. So thank you so much for coming, Andrew.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, we just told the listeners, they're going to get some great takeaways here. So you're an incredible modern top sales producer, over 350 million, if that is correct, of services sold. And you're going to make a long career of it, and you're creating yourself as a great salesperson. And you've already done all this by the age of 33. Your top end knows no bounds. So tell me how you got here, what makes you so special, and what can people learn from you today and by getting the book?
Sure, yeah. So thanks for the introduction. A bit about me. Uh, I have been, like you said, I've been in ad tech sales for the past decade. I, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into sales pretty early on. It stretches back to when I was an intern at Enterprise Rent-A-Car back in college. And one of the things that I actually really fell in love with is the customer service, customer facing element of it. And then the more I learned about the role, the more I fell in love with the fact that you can be as successful as hard as you would like to work and as good as you can get. And so, you know, my one of the things that really attracts me to the role is the client facing element of it. And then the more and more I got into the industry, I also was very interested in the industry. And so it is obviously a challenging role. I've been at two ad tech companies now. I sell both digital media services and software. And I got to a point where, I didn't start off very good, just like many people, right? I didn't have any really formalized sales training like many people in our industry. And so I learned by reading sales books and meeting with other top salespeople, and really by applying what I learned by doing, making a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but continuously trying to get better. And so, that's what I did. And I take pride in the fact that I was consistently trying to improve myself, taking feedback, applying it. And I got to a point where, I every meeting I went into, I was able to get next steps. And it took me about 6 months, but I was able to close my first deal. And then the more and more I was able to do it, the better I got. And then I decided, digital media services is great, but where the industry was going was bringing the technology that we were using at my last company to execute the media. That's where the industry was going. So I sought out an opportunity to sell software, which was another transition for me. But again, same process. I learned on the job. I tried to get better, took feedback, and got to a point now where I'm now selling both services and software. And as you mentioned in the beginning, I've had a lot of success growing my book of business. I've sold over $350 million in my career, and I'm happy to share some of the strategies and tactics that have allowed me to get there. I will say that, I got to a place where I feel like I've learned so much from my career, and a lot of that has been based on the sales books I've read and learning by doing. And so I wanted to share those learnings so that way people that are like me, that come out and start in sales without formalized sales training, could use all of my learnings that I've gathered from the last 10 years and can get a head start. So that's really why I wrote the book. It's a step-by-step guide that teaches the audience everything that I've done in my career to go from zero to managing over $100 million this year, step by step, exactly what to say and do. It is exactly what I do today, and exactly what I would do if I started over.
That's amazing. And I'm going to tell you, when I initially, the fact that you got me interested through a LinkedIn message, and we all get zillions of LinkedIn messages, right? So there was just a reason I paid attention to yours. So there was just something there that you communicated through electronics. So kudos to you. Then I go out and buy your book. And then I'm listening, as I just told you right before this, I'm listening to your YouTube shorts, which I'm just frantically writing down notes. And my initial thought was, I'm 30, almost 30 years older than you, was, hey, sales has been around since the beginning of time. There was a lot of what I'll call master of the obvious stuff initially, right? To open a chapter, whatever. And I'm like, where's this guy going with this? But then what you put after it, while some of it was a reminder, I will say almost every single thing had a new twist or angle on it that I then realized, like, wow, this guy's got game. Andrew's like, I can learn a lot from him, and that highly engaged me. So kudos to you, from deep from in my heart. And because I just started a new job, I'm like jumping to your tips. So one thing I'm going to ask you is diving all over the place. So the piece I was just listening to was cold emails using ChatGPT, which just launched 5.0 on Friday. Talk to the listeners who haven't seen that short of yours, and I would encourage them to get on your channel. Talk to the listeners about, hey, you just got a new job, you just got a new list. How are you approaching getting those meetings?
Yeah. So, yeah, ChatGPT honestly has been one of the biggest, I think, developments for really obviously the world, especially in corporate America. It touches every job, but especially for somebody who's starting out in a new role, it can be such an incredible, valuable resource. And I just look at my own past year and a half, where I started out with zero. I had no idea how to write a book. I didn't know how to create a website. I didn't know how to make a YouTube channel. Didn't know how to do any of this stuff. And thankfully, I was able to use ChatGPT to basically give me step-by-step instructions on how to do it. So it's an incredibly valuable resource. Now, your question was about how can you use it in a sales role to do cold outreach, right? And I think that where it can come into play is really being more efficient with your time. So historically, before ChatGPT, you'd have to do a ton of research. You'd have to come up with basically how to apply what you learned to create a tailored message. What ChatGPT can do for you is you still need to do research. You need to gather information from the prospect's LinkedIn page, from their website, from Google, wherever you can find, from your CRM, wherever you can gather information from the web. And then, but where it comes into play is you can then paste it into ChatGPT. And I recommend you need to give it direction. So don't let it do all the work for you. You should guide it to get the right output for you. And so the approach I take for cold outreach is I will gather all the details that I have, even if it means pasting in old meeting notes if it's somebody that I'm reaching out to that I spoke to in the past and I have notes from it. And then I will then create a prompt, which basically asks ChatGPT to say, hey, I am this role. I am reaching out to this person who has this role. Here's what I know about the person. Here's our general value proposition. And then I will say, please craft me a tailored message using this information with the value proposition I'm providing you, with a call to action and then provide the avails. You can do that and create tailored outreach messages for way more context, way quicker than ever before. You just need to feed it with that information, and it does a lot of the work for you. The only thing I would say is that, it does have a specific way of writing. You can use the prompt of like, try to sound like me. But ultimately, I recommend you looking at it over, putting your own, personal touch on it, tweak it as needed, but then send it out. And you can get a much faster, more tailored message than ever before.
Yeah, that is perfect. And that was the thread I was just listening to before. And you've today, right after this our podcast, I'm going to get back on the horse and just take that extra time to do that, because what you're already teaching me, and probably the listener, is, hey, we all have access to the same public information. It's just a matter of how do we use that. And you're sharpening, I can tell you, as a focus group of one, you're sharpening my tool to say you're best off to spend time doing that. So now with that sort of emphasis and focus, what kind of a response rate do you get on these cold emails? I'm really curious.
So regardless of, everything I just outlined for you, best practice to implement, I'm still a firm believer, and I always have been, that it's about reaching the right person at the right time. And in order to do that, you need to cast a wide net. You need to reach that person multiple times over multiple channels. So I don't believe in the perfect email, right? But I do believe in reaching the perfect prospect at the right time. In a similar scenario like you, I reach out to tons of people, right? You have to cast a wide net in order to make sure that you reach somebody at the right time. Like in a situation like you, where you're starting, a new role, and it was useful for you, right? But I reach out to hundreds of people, I'll never hear back from you. What ChatGPT allows you to do is to craft more tailored emails than a fully generic one, and reach way more people with those tailored emails a lot quicker and faster and easier than ever before. And so your question was about how, what your response rate is. I really don't have a specific number for you. What I would say is that for me, I don't even look at like, what is my response rate? It's more how many responses do I get, right? So I'm the kind of person where like, I would rather send out 100 cold emails a day, right? And get 2 responses versus, spending all day crafting the perfect 5 messages where you don't know if you're ever going to hear back from those people. So I think that you need to cast a wide net in order to reach the right person at the right time. And your message isn't going to change the fact of whether they are the right person or not. But by reaching out to more people with a tailored message, it will give you a higher chance of getting a response than a smaller number of people with the perfect message.
Love that. And I'm just gonna, what I love that you just did, by the way, is you take your own medicine. I loved how you just used my own words, right, and repeated back to me, as you said earlier in the question, which validated me, right, made me feel even warmer towards you. And physically, if you're listening, you can't see me leaning in. So you've done everything necessary. So I'm getting a master's degree in education here. One more portion on so the selling process is like the prospecting, getting it, then getting the meeting, right? Because unless you get the meeting, there's nothing to talk about. So talk to me about, in getting that first meeting, what's your strategy on sequencing, or how often to write them, or, are you using any automation to do that? Because it's all about getting that first meeting.
With the outreach?
Exactly.
So I believe that you need at least 7 touch points, just a rule of thumb, before you can expect a response from a cold prospect. There are some people that are never going to respond to a cold email. And so you shouldn't just keep reaching out to that person. I think, if you get to that 7 touch point threshold and you're not getting a response, chances are it's just not the right person or not the right time. And so to answer your question about sequencing in terms of best practices, I think that you should use multiple channels to try to reach somebody. If you know that this is somebody that's qualified, that's somebody that you really, really want to talk to, your best chance of actually getting a response is to take a multi-pronged approach. One is, use LinkedIn. You can obviously get a lot of information from someone's LinkedIn. So you can send a message to them or send a direct message if you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator and you're not connected. I'll just throw out a connection and usually people will accept it. From there, if you don't get a response, then you follow up by email and you put in your subject line, LinkedIn follow up, and you mentioned, hey, I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I'm just following up to see, if we can set up some time, provided your value proposition, right? Does that mean you're going to get a response in your second message? No, not necessarily. You may not, right? But then you follow up in 2 days later, right? With another email. And then you can mix in things like video messages and stuff like that if you choose to. But if you really are desperate to get in touch with somebody and you really want to get, this person's qualified, the best way to ultimately get a response is by picking up the phone and giving them a call. Most people won't do that this day and age, which makes it the perfect channel to break through the noise. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to pick up, but what 9 times out of 10 in my experience is if you leave a message, they will listen to that message. And so that's your best way to actually break through. From there, right? So you've sent a LinkedIn message, you've sent an email or two, you've followed up and you gave them a call, you left a voicemail. Now you follow up with another email and say, hey, just left you a message, wanted to see if we can connect, right? So putting that in the subject line, left a message, following up, whatever, and from there, that in my experience is very likely to get a response. The reason for that is really twofold. Number one is you've now reached them on multiple channels, so you have a smaller chance of not having to have the wrong contact information. Some people don't go on LinkedIn. Some people don't answer cold emails, right? But if you use multiple channels, chances are they're going to at least, use one of them. And then, so you have a better chance of breaking through to them, not using the wrong contact information. And most importantly is they don't want you calling again, and so, even if for whatever reason they're not in market or what have you, chances are you'll get a response because if they're not in market, they'll tell you, right? They don't want you to continue to call them. So I think that's the best way to break through the noise and actually get a response.
I love that. Okay. One follow-up question there. All right, so you talk about the phone. This is such a hot topic in my office, and I coach and train too. And by the way, as a seller out there, no matter what your level you're at, Andrew does offer personal coaching. So I would recommend it as well as his book, 100%. And he has a workbook that comes with that as well. Okay, so let's talk about the phone for a second. All right. A, where are you getting the number? B, is it their cell or their office? And C, do you feel it's appropriate? This is such a hot question in my office right now. It is appropriate to call someone's cell phone out of the blue.
Yeah, people don't usually use their landlines anymore, so you don't really have a choice if you want to call them, right? And a lot of times people are either hybrid or they're working remotely fully, or people just don't really have office numbers anymore sometimes, right? So I think it's totally fine to call someone's cell phone. That's how people connect with people these days, is over your cell phones. Like, the desk phone or the landline are completely outdated. So that's the only way to really connect with somebody. That's to answer your first question. Your second question, what was your second question again with respect to phone?
Well, just, you kind of answered it, the appropriateness of calling somebody's cell phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I answered my own question. If they're listing their phone number on LinkedIn,
or
it's in their signature, it's fair game, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Because
So, and you asked me how I get their information. Zoom info is what we use. Not always available, but it will say if it's their cell phone or their office number, if it is up there. And the other one you mentioned, which is LinkedIn. So if you go to someone's contact information, if they list their number there, you're listing it for a reason. Why else would you put it out there? So I think it's totally appropriate, and that's how I get people's numbers.
Perfect. Okay. Now to the sellers out there. Andrew's got the sales call. Talk to me about the preparation leading up to the sales call, execution of the sales call, and then next steps to close the deal.
Sure. So I was actually I'm actually in the middle of editing a YouTube video where I filmed myself preparing for a prospect call. So I could just walk through very quickly the approach that I take. So I really use 3 main resources if I'm going into a call. I could say 4 actually. Depending on if it's completely cold or if it's somebody that I know that I maybe worked with in the past or have some sort of connection, depending on how I got the actual meeting. The first one and the most obvious one is LinkedIn, of course. So I will always look at both the person's LinkedIn page and look at like their job description, how they actually describe their role. as well as their about section, if they've posted about anything recently, what's their tenure like, what is their history before they started working at this company. And there's a lot of information you get from their page. Then I will jump over to the person's company page and I will read the blurb of how they describe themselves. I will look at their core specialty areas, which is in a section below that. Then I will look at their their people section, because I'm interested in knowing what the titles are. I want to get an understanding of the inner workings of the company that I'm speaking to. And you can get a lot of information about their core services and what the inner workings of their company are by looking at the job titles that work at the company, right? What specialties that they have, etc. Also, how many people work in different departments. So that's the second place. The third place is I'll go over to the website and I will look at the key people that they have listed. A lot of times it's their executive team. It's a smaller company. They may have everybody. Sometimes they have a blurb about the person, and their role. But you can sometimes find more up-to-date list of employees than you can from LinkedIn. I will look at their description of how they describe themselves. What are their differentiators? Look at case studies to see what clients they have. Then I'll take a look and see if they have any partners listed on their website. Basically gather as much information as I can. I will also just kind of, I guess, a 3 or 2.5, which is just putting their name into Google to see if they have any recent articles that they've been posting, right? Also, pro tip, if you put on, I put on the bell notification for any company that I'm calling on or the person. So that way I get notified and they're in my feed whenever they post, so I can then comment on it. But you can also set up Google Alerts if you want to. I will put their name into Google. I'll see what I can find from there. And the last place is CRM, which I'll cross-reference all of this against my CRM. If there is a history between our companies, I want to know what that history is. I want to read through all of the notes so that way I can come into the meeting, pivoting to the second part of this, which is actually how to conduct a meeting, is I want to come into the meeting fully prepared with as much information as I could possibly find about this person online. But I need to be flexible when I get on the conversation, when I get on the call. I don't want to just, come in with a pitch and that's the pitch I'm giving no matter what, because these are all assumptions. So how I handle the meeting is I look at my meetings like a doctor's visit, where, you go into a meeting with somebody for the first time. Think about it like how you go into a doctor's office. The goal of a doctor's visit, obviously you come in with some sort of ailment, right? In this scenario, it's either a challenge they have that they're aware of, or they're exploring new solutions, or they have a goal, right? Your job as a salesperson is to understand their situation, right? All of the inner workings of their company. What are their needs, to understand, do they have any key challenges that they're aware of that they're trying to resolve right away? Or do you have to inform them by educating them how things could be better? And then from there, basically the way you handle it is, hey, I did a lot of research. This is what I found out about you, right? Give them the upfront, explain why you're qualified for this conversation. I work with a lot of companies just like you, and I have ideas based on what I found. However, you can't find everything from the internet, right? So I just want to start off with a few quick questions up front so that way I can fully understand your situation and can therefore present the best solution that's tailored to your exact needs. And that's how I handle the meetings, which again, give some information up front, provide the research, build some rapport, ask your initial questions, and then from there it should be a dialogue where you go back and forth, where they give you ask a relevant question, you then use their words to tailor a solution that can then solve for whatever their needs are, and then you work to try to get the next step before the meeting ends.
Oh man, you are textbook, and so early in your career, it's really, really impressive. And I know as a listener and people who are listening, you're getting so many tips out of that. I love the multi-pronged approach and just you're getting that validation from someone early that you've done your homework, and then throwing it out to them and then maintaining that flexibility. Okay, so now you've got this dialogue, whatever. Let's get to the end of the call, how you're closing up that call, and then how you're taking next steps.
So I actually have an exact script that I use in meetings that I start off the meeting with. That that your listeners can find on my website, andrewbarbuto.com/resources, my meeting hack of how to secure next steps in 5 minutes. Basically, I will set the meeting up from the beginning to make securing next steps very natural at the end of the meeting. So that way it's not like, oh, I need to hurry up and try to get the message. It was, you get agreement of whatever the next step is, assuming that what you talk about is valuable to them, it's worth continuing to explore. That's an easy thing for people to commit to, because you're only saying, hey, we're only going to continue our conversations at the next step if this seems like it will be valuable for you. It's then on you to provide tailored value based on their needs. And then at the end of the call, whenever you're coming to an end, you say, hey, seems like this was valuable, right? Have them say what they found most valuable and say, great, well, then, like we discussed at the beginning, why don't we set up that next step? And then it should be, an easy thing for them. If you've done a good enough job with presenting tailored value that are specific to their needs, they should want to continue that conversation. And they've already committed to it at the beginning. So by them saying, hey, yes, it sounds like it would be helpful, then they've essentially already agreed to the next step without you needing to do anything. And you just try to get it on the calendar before the meeting ends, because people get busy. Even if they say, yes, I would love to set up that demo or whatever the next step is, that's no guarantee that they're going to do it right away. So it's best to capture their attention while you have it, by trying to get it on the calendar. So great. Would you mind taking out your calendar and see if we can get that scheduled right now? If we need to, reschedule, or you want me to reconfirm, I'm happy to. But it's better to get it on the calendar rather than having to wait and then following up a million times before you get a response. People get busy.
Yeah, fantastic. And what I think makes you so special, to be honest, and I think this is important for the listeners to understand, as I've coached so many salespeople over the course of my career, there's a fine line between being aggressive and assertive, right? No one likes someone who's aggressive, like car salesmen are considered that, right? But people do like people who are assertive. For one to be assertive, you need a warmth about you and an authenticity, and you exude that 1,000,000%. From seeing you, from listening to you, from listening to your YouTube, like you really mean what you say on a personal and professional level. I instantly got that from your first email, and it's inspiring. So if I'm your client, I don't mind, it's like a little pushy, some would say, right? Oh, just send me an email and we'll set up the next date. And you're doing very similar to what I do. I'm like, well, let me take that step away from you. What's better, next Wednesday or Thursday? Oh, you're on vacation that week. Let's look at the next week. And they'll actually, I think salespeople are afraid to ask to take that next step, and you just do it so effortlessly. So kudos to you, man. It's really impressive. It's really impressive. All right. So you've given so many tips already. Talk to me about one of the points we pre-discussed in here is the longevity, right? Mm-hmm. So sales is brutal. We get told no 99 times out of 100. How do you keep yourself fresh, and how do you keep yourself going from, in essence, the brutality of somewhat of the negativity that can be associated with being a seller?
Yeah. So obviously it's one of the most challenging jobs there are in the world. And I think that not enough people talk about that, but it's true. I got some validation because I asked ChatGPT, like, how does B2B sales compare to some of the most difficult careers in the world? And it validated that it's right up there with entrepreneur as the most challenging job there is. And so, yeah, it's not easy for anybody to continue year after year after year. It starts over. You need to continuously grow your business, etc. I think that is a challenge for me personally when it comes to getting rejected. I don't mind getting rejected. Obviously, it is painful when deals fall through. But it is a part of the process. It is inevitable. And I always try to remind myself that the best salespeople often get rejected the most because they're reaching out to the most people. So I use a basketball analogy in my book. At the end of my book, I include 25 sales realities that every salesperson, I think, needs to know going into it if you're new, or it's a good reminder. And one of them is to say that, when it comes to sales, it's about who could score the most amount of points, not who has the highest shooting percentage. And so what that means in practice is it doesn't matter if you took 100 shots if 5 of them went in and you end up scoring more than everybody else, right? And so in order to do that, you need to get rejected 95 times. And so usually it's the people that take the most amount of shots that work the hardest that end up being the most successful, even if they're not as skilled as somebody who's lazy but has incredible sales skills. Because you need to continue to work hard to stay on top of things in order to, and you need to set up a ton of meetings, and you need to, have a ton of opportunities in the pipeline in order to make sales. That's just how it works. It's both an art and a science. And if you have one or the other, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, you really need both. I love how that section is highlighted in my book. And again, users, it's on Amazon. Order it today. Sales Reality 1, it will be harder than you think. Everyone who I talk to, we've had some recent guests on who are coming from the buy side, and then they're hanging out their own shingle as an entrepreneur. So their experience has been receiving the sales calls. And the number one pain point is they get on and they're like, I have so much respect for you as salespeople because you guys just get pounded. And one of the things they say, it's a common point, is even people they've known for years will ghost them or blow them off, which you and I know very, very well. But they ask me, what do you do about that? And I'm like, you just can't take it personally. It's not about that. You said something early in this podcast that was great. The right time and the right place and and the right person, and getting messaging to them repeatedly. So kudos. Your book is so amazing. Talk to me about, and it goes into the third point we had discussed, really the making of a great salesperson. I can tell you, the making of a great salesperson, if you are getting into sales or you're in sales, whatever, get Andrew's book, get on his get on his YouTube channel, watch his videos. Top Sales Producer, How to Crush Your Sales Quota. Besides reading your book, what would you say people should do to make themselves the great salesperson that, quite honestly, you are?
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that I did early in my career, so I'll give two things. Number one is, I think that in order to be a top sales producer in 2025, you need to be an expert on your company, on your industry, and on your prospect and clients' companies. So you need to be a true expert. You need to have deep knowledge in order to navigate all of the things that will come up. So what do I recommend is, if you're going into sales, if you're considering going into it in a complex B2B environment, I recommend starting with a job which is basically learning the ropes, and using that opportunity to really truly understand what goes into what you're selling. You need to know, everything that goes into it in order to properly sell it, right? So become an expert, read the trades daily, take every training that you can find, use the opportunity if you're not in sales yet, before you get a sales quota and you need to start applying it immediately, in order to become an expert. So that way, once you go into the field, all you need to master is the sales process. I think that you can learn to be a great salesperson. I think my book is a great resource in order to do that. Obviously, there are a ton of great sales books out there. I have a list at the end of my book, which is additional recommended reading of all the books that have had the biggest impact on me. I think another thing is big is you need to understand finances really well as well. So understanding how to read a balance sheet is another thing that I didn't know going into it, that I learned, and it's helped make me a better salesperson, especially when it comes to selling software. But the second thing is, meet with other salespeople, especially top performers. You will be surprised, perhaps, or maybe you won't, if you've ever spoken to a salesperson, but they're happy to speak. And so from my experience, people are more than willing to, if you go to them and say, hey, I'm here to learn. Can you give me tell me about what has made you so special? How have you been able to succeed? They'll be an open book 9 times out of 10. And I don't think people take enough advantage of this, which is, at my company, even to this day, I will set up meetings with people that I see performing really well. And I will just come in with a list of questions, to try to get as much information to pick their brain. And from my experience, some of the best learnings that I've had that have helped me become a better salesperson have been from other top sales folks who are doing exactly what I'm doing and are succeeding at it. So who better to use as a resource than the people that are doing what you want to do? So that's my advice: is become an expert and then pick other top salespeople's brains.
Oh, again, right out of my playbook. And you recommended reading, which I would definitely tell people on page 272 and 273. By the way, I looked, I'd read 50% of these books, but now I have 50% more to go. And my anchor was How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was the first one that really, I think, if anyone's going to start with a book, that's one that's, pretty much life changing for both your personal and professional life. So much here, Andrew. I have so many notes. I'm sure the listener, if you were wise enough to get out a pen and paper before you do this, you've learned so much. So as we're heading towards our close, talk to me a little bit about writing the book. That's no easy task, and really being so organized with what you're doing, what you learned in writing the book. And then as we get there, we always like to close and the services that you offer. Please, I'm inspired as well. And then we like to leave people with is if there's one thing they walk away from this conversation after donating their time to us, the most valuable resource ever, that they can walk away with.
Yeah. So writing a book, I kind of always wanted to put all of my sales processes down in one place, even before the book. I take a ton of notes. And so I always kind of wanted to just put them all down in one place because we learn so much. There's so many tactics that we do throughout the sales cycle, different types of deals and such. And so I think it's helpful to consolidate it. And so that's one thing. I already had a lot of these processes in place, but also obviously I'm doing it to this day, right? So it was easy for me to write it because I'm just writing what I'm doing as I go about my day. And what ultimately was what pushed me to write the book is I thought I had an ideal sales process down at my first company, but the book wouldn't have been as good if I wrote it back then. Although I was able to be very successful with selling services, and I did get it down to a complete science. Selling software is a completely different ballgame. And it did take me a little while to actually get that down because it's a completely different type of sale. It's very challenging. There's a lot more decision makers, more financial, strategies and stuff involved. You need to know a lot more. And so now I can say, after doing this for 6 years, that I can sell either services or software, and my sales process is repeatable. So that's why I wrote the book, is because I do, for the most part, the same steps in every single sale throughout the sales cycle. It starts with the research. It uses that research in order to cast a wide net. You get in the meeting and then you do more research and you give that research up front. Then you try to secure next steps. And so step by step by step, it is a process, and there are best practices at each stage. And I included not only all of the best practices in the book, but also exactly what to say. Like I was saying in the beginning of this conversation, when I first started, although there was a ton of great resources and there are a ton of great sales books to read, there was no step-by-step playbook that tells you exactly what to do and what to say from day one. And that's what I set out to do, was to write the book I wish I had when I first started. So that way somebody who's going into sales on their first day, they have no idea how to sell, can read the book. And by the end of the book, they can have a good understanding of best practices of how to sell. So that's really the goal. And it literally starts as, it's your first day in sales. You just set up your computer. What do you do next?
Yeah, I love that. And I've kept this, I'm sorry to cut you off. I keep this book on my desk, and I will tell you, I think I know I'm selling books for you, because people come by and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, man, this guy's got like the step-by-step guide. So when I get a little bit stuck, which I do often, I just go to this next step, and it reminds me of what I'm supposed to do. And we're not solving, the world peace at this point, right? We're just, what I loved is you said it's a repeatable, process that can be used. So that's really incredible. And I'm sorry I cut you off from there.
No, I was just going to say that it's a 10-step process. The first step is onboarding. The second through 10 is all of the steps of a sales cycle and best practices in each. And it ends with the sale being made. So that's the progression. It's basically set up as a sales cycle. And
Oh,
obviously there's a lot of different types of deals, a lot of different things come up. I try to cover as much as I possibly could.
amazing. All right. So tell our people, please, how they can get in touch with you. We'll put that in the show notes. What kind of services do you offer personally? I'm sure a lot of people are going to be inspired by that. I certainly am. And then what's that one nugget that you can leave people, if nothing else, from today?
Yeah, so we've been talking about it, right? My book is Top Sales Producer: How to Crush Your Sales Quota. It is available on Amazon in every format. The audiobook is coming soon. So just type in, Top Sales Producer: How to Crush Your Sales Quota. You could find it there. You could also get some free resources like the one I mentioned earlier about my meeting hack on my website, andrewbarbuto.com/resources. I have a ton of free content there, things like meeting preparation module, the prompts I use in ChatGPT, etc. I also, as you mentioned, put out weekly B2B sales tips videos on my YouTube channel at Andrew Barbuto, all one word. And then finally, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Andrew Barbuto. In terms of the services, as you mentioned, I do personalized one-on-one coaching. And also can offer that to companies as well. So, I encourage you guys to reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm happy to have a conversation. But either way, go ahead and check out those free resources, andrewbarbuto.com/resources.
Fantastic. And leave them with one nugget. Why should people get in touch with you and read the book?
Yeah. So for me, there was a big turning point at one point in my career that I think really changed the way that I look at the sales role, and has since been sitting at the core of how I sell, how I look at my job, what I do on a daily basis, how I handle meetings. It's really like it's the secret sauce of my sales process. And that is that I put helping people at the core of everything I do. So one of the books that I read that really changed the perspective for me, because when I started out in sales, like a lot of people, I was trying to sell, right? I was doing business pitches and such, and I was thinking about how can I convince these people to work with me, right? Rather than the correct way to look at the sales role, which is how can I help the people that need my help? And so the book that I'm referring to is called The Go-Giver. I'm actually in the process of re-listening to it by Bob Berg and David Mann. And the crux of that book is essentially that our job as salespeople is to help people. It is to give as much value as you possibly can. And that is regardless of whether there's a contract in place or not. And so this is the thing that I think that most salespeople are lacking these days, which is they're reaching out for selfish reasons. They're reaching out because they want to make a sale, they want to hit their quota, and I get it. There's a lot of pressure on us to do that. And I'm not saying that you don't want to make sales. What I'm saying is that if you focus on helping rather than selling, you will make more sales. Your performance in meetings will improve. Your emails will be better. You will target better, more qualified people, and you will ultimately make more sales and do a better job with crushing your quota. So try to find the people that you can genuinely help, right, by doing research. And then when you get into meetings with them, ask questions, not to try to sell them or figure out how you're going to be able to sell them, but ask questions because you're genuinely curious. So that way you can determine the best way to genuinely help them based on their needs, right? So that's the difference. You had mentioned, I come off as someone who seems genuine. And that's because when I'm having conversations with somebody, I'm not having a conversation with them or going into a sales meeting for any other reason, rather than me trying to determine if I can help them. And that will ultimately also come off in your meetings. People can always tell because of the questions that you ask will change, because the way you present in meetings will change, right? If you're asking a question, hey, Brian, tell me a bit about what you're trying to achieve this year. And then you're diving deeper into that to really understand because you're trying to determine whether you can help them. That will come off significantly better. Your meetings will be much more productive, and your person that you're speaking to will have a better experience with you, because ultimately you're not going to be able to help everybody. And that's one of the things I make clear as well is you're not going to be right for everybody. So you need to weed out the ones you're not and try to determine if the people that you're speaking to, you can genuinely help. When you take an approach like that, you will see all of your sales processes will be a level up, and you'll see performance improve dramatically. And again, there doesn't have to be a contract. So you're not going to be able to sell everybody immediately. What you should do, though, is to always try to find ways to add value. So that means sending relevant articles, sending relevant research, case studies, content, whatever you can do to help that person, right? Regardless of whether there's a contract in place, is the role of the salesperson. That will lead to deals because they will appreciate the value that you deliver for them. You'll create great relationships. Even if there's not an opportunity now, they'll think of you in the future. And I think that would change a lot of people's approaches. And in the sales role itself, we'll have a different perspective on it.
Man, it's solid gold. And it's just, one of my old bosses said, just be human, right? We all want to be cared for and not be sold something. So, Andrew, thank you so very much. I could talk to you all day, but I know both you and I need to actually go solve people's problems and bring them value and help them, like you said. So I want to thank you. If you're a listener and you weren't watching, the entire time I was shaking my head yes. So if Andrew right now said, can I sell you a Ferrari, I would have been, or can I help you buy your next thing? I certainly would have been doing that. His book, as I'm holding up, is Top Sales Producer. I love everything about it and everything about you. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And we want to make this, as I just told you, perhaps a recurring visit, because I think you're like a vitamin energy boost to the sales profession to really help them out.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. So thank you so much to the listeners. This has been another episode of Owning the Goal, where we aim to help you by bringing value to what you do in any aspect of your career. Selling is success, and success in sales is success in life. So keep coming back. We're getting more frequent with our publishing schedule, and we thank you all so much for your time.